In December, the Vatican officially announced that Mother Teresa would be made a saint this year. She's already partially on the way to public sainthood, having been beatified already, but that during this year of mercy, hopefully, maybe even in September, around the time of the year that she passed away, that she would perhaps be canonized, but that it would be official in a short term that it was going to happen. She's really a wonderful modern saint of our times. Many people can relate to her. We know the beautiful stories of her bringing healing to those who were sick, caring for the poor, opening up orphanages. It's a beautiful story of how one day she took a woman who was on the street, who she saw, who was bruised, beaten, who had open sores, and her sores were infested with bugs. So kind of an ugly scene, we'll just put it that way. But she was not afraid. She took the lady, she brought her into one of their homes, and it was there that she cared for her, and immediately she began to dress her wounds. Immediately she began to caress her hair, and treat her with dignity, give her the gift of humanity, make her feel like a person. And the woman didn't want to receive this. The woman started yelling at Mother Teresa and insulting her, actually. And she said to her, "Why are you doing this for me? Why do you behave like this and you're treating me so good? Who taught you how to do this?" And Mother Teresa said, "My God taught me how to do this. God taught me how to express the gift of love." And so the woman said, "Well, I'd like to know your God. How do I get to know who this God is?" And Mother just simply said, "You're witnessing and seeing him right now, because this God is called, very simply, love." Really, for ourselves, there's a good meaning to this for learning ourselves about expressing the gift of love. That really, who is it in our lives that we love? Who do we consider to be unlovable? How do we express love? How do we receive it as well? As this woman in the story was really not able to receive love. She was not conditioned to it. Our readings give us some good insight, though. The first reading from Jeremiah has Jeremiah telling us about how God said to him, "Before you were born, when you were still in the womb, before you took your first breath, I knew you, I cared for you, I loved you." There's somewhat of a deeper meaning here of that God loved all of the chosen people, the Israelites. But specifically to Jeremiah, he's saying, "Before you were born, I knew you." Knew meaning I loved you. And so if there was ever any question about when life begins, it's pretty clear here that it's in the womb. And if anybody ever challenges us as Catholic Christians about that, we can go right to Jeremiah and say, God loved us, and we can receive love before we even see the light of day and take our very first breath. Our gospel reading speaks of love. You see, Jesus came into the world for a radical love. I use that term because that's what Matthew Kelly uses in the Rediscover Jesus book. And if you haven't yet opened it, I think it's time. It's been over a month since you received it at Christmas time. But he talks about radical love. And that's what Jesus came into the world to do, was to express and to show people a whole new kind of love. The people in his hometown, they didn't know how to receive that. They didn't know how to take that. They didn't understand it. And they criticized him. Continuation of last week's gospel, when Jesus opened up the scroll, talked about his mission, talked about how he was going to come for the poor, proclaim liberty to captives, give sight to the blind, all these great things of how he was going to show them how to love. And then he tells them about the widow. He talks about Elisha and about how those who maybe were unlovable were the ones that God came to love the most. And they didn't understand that. They saw that as being suddenly inciting in themselves jealousy. They got very jealous of the fact that why would God come to these Gentiles, to these non-Jewish, non-Hebrew people? And so the people of Nazareth take him there to the brow of the hill. You can only imagine that scene. Taking their own kinsperson, their own, someone that they know that he grew up there. And they're ready to throw him over the hill. What was a Holy Spirit moment? Jesus kind of magically disappears. He's able to get through the whole crowd because he had something much more important to do. And when we are called to love, God protects us. God will give us what we need in order to carry out that mission. And that gift of love is something that St. Paul very clearly speaks of in 1 Corinthians. You see, in this particular reading, which is so often proclaimed at weddings, and it's very beautiful, but ironically, it was written and spoken to a group of people that were in conflict, not that were coming together. Paul was writing to them to say, look, folks, love is patient, love is kind, love is not jealous, love is not rude, and you all need to learn something about love. He wasn't extolling it to people who were in love. He was telling them what it could be. And just think of what the world could be if there was an incredible amount of love given in the Spirit that God gives it to us in the person of Jesus Christ. So today is a good day for us to think of that question of how do we love? Who is unlovable to us? Because, that person might be standing there at the gate of heaven when we get there. And they could be the barrier between us and getting in, between being on the outside, being on the inside. Because God is probably going to ask us not for a laundry list of all the things that we did in our life, all the good deeds that we did. Rather, he's going to ask us maybe a very simple question, and that is, how did you love? How can we answer that question if there's people in our lives who we consider to be on the outside? If we're not able to take them off the street, cleanse their wounds, and do it not because it may give us grandeur in heaven, but to do it because that's what God asks us to do. To be able to give love, to be able to receive love. This is something also that today is kind of problematic because many people don't know how to be loved. It's okay to receive God's love. It's okay to be loved by other people. We each have something so special inside, a soul that God created in the womb before we were born. How is it that that soul can grow, can mature, can be able to be loved in order that we can be the best lovers as well? Mother Teresa also had a beautiful quote. One time she said, I am just a little pencil in God's hand, writing a love letter to the world. What a beautiful thought. I'm just a little pencil in God's hand, writing a love letter to the world. We're all little pencils in God's hand. What story of love are we writing?